It's time to review Black Widow and Hawkeye #1, Stephanie Phillips, Paolo Villanelli. On this one, we have a new status quo for Black Widow. If you are unaware of this, she's now a symbiote. We've got Hawkeye getting back into the game. We don't see these characters very often. And here to talk to me about this is Doc.
You know, what we really, really, really need is somebody else with a fucking symbiote.
So after Capwolf and the Howling Commando, I was like, wait, that's actually a pretty decent miniseries. Maybe Stephanie Phillips has turned the corner. I think I've realized, because that's really only based on like one comic book and you didn't have to do any research, she was able to kind of get it right because it's not a lot established. When it comes to like a Black Widow and Hawkeye type characters, there's lots of history. And when she has to do her homework, I just don't think she's up for it. She doesn't realize who the characters are. She doesn't get their relationships. And me personally, I think this is one writer that Marvel needs to give up on. Like, they've given her enough chances, probably over 100 comic books published over the last 2 or 3 years. None of it is ever taken. And it's time. I'm not saying fire anybody, but if Marvel Comics had a functioning brain cell, they would give up on Stephanie Phillips. But I know you were going to fight me on this one because you think she's turned the corner.
It's not that I think she's turned the corner. It's just I think that she managed to write one not utterly incompetent thing. And that was a little bit of a shock to me. Now, that being said, I still don't think Stephanie Phillips has turned any sort of corner. I don't think she's really qualified to even sharpen the editor's fucking pencils. Every so often, she manages to do something that is not utterly and completely abysmal, that I don't want to rip my eyes out reading.
I have broken your brain by making you read so many bad comic books. You're comparing to this shit, to stuff like X-Men 32 last week, which is admittedly far worse, but it's among the worst X-Men comic books in the history of the world, and it's making it read like Stephanie Phillips' Black Widow and Hawkeye is a completely average comic book, which I would say it's not. Especially the art doesn't help because it's so flat and boring and lifeless, and there's almost no detail to it.
You know, you may be onto something there. You have subjected me to so many bad comics over the past year or 3 that I might actually be broken. That's what this has been. Wes torturing me for 3 years.
Gladly doing so with a smile.
Well, in fairness, I'd probably be smiling too if I was doing it to you. So, okay. I feel you.
I'm not sure what the name of Black Widow's symbiote is, but she certainly has one. And admittedly, this is not a Stephanie Phillips idea. This is not something Stephanie Phillips introduced. This was actually introduced, I believe, by Al Ewing in his Venom series. He had Black Widow show up, and shockingly, he put a symbiote on her because everyone needs symbiotes. But it kind of goes against the idea of what Black Widow is, a completely capable upper echelon hand-to-hand combatant, spy, and all that kind of stuff. Doesn't really need a symbiote. I think they're overthinking their use of symbiotes at Marvel Comics. Spider-Man didn't need a symbiote because he already had powers, and that was kind of the big revelation in the story. When it went off to him, it went to a pathetic loser, Eddie Brock, who wanted to kill himself. And it helped him regain his life and all that kind of stuff. Then it moves on to like a Flash Thompson, who's lost his legs, and now he gets to feel what it's like to be a hero and going out and making a difference again. Putting it on somebody that's so fucking exceptionally capable is a waste of time in any stupid story element.
In addition to the fact that we just have too many fucking people with symbiotes already.
So you put a symbiote in Hulk for a page or a couple of pages in the story, and that's exciting, but then you take it immediately off of him because Hulk doesn't need it. And for some reason, they've left that skin on a Black Widow, which I think is a major hindrance to the character. We've also got Hawkeye in this story. And one of the things that confounds me about this particular comic book, why I think it's so poor, and you said you kind of like the dialogue in here, and I thought it was atrocious, especially this one page. We've got a bunch of assassins trying to kill Hawkeye in Madripoor. He says, "I'm dead." Well, I guess that is the point of an assassin. But this particular assassin also plans to flay me and turn my skin into a winter coat. He's just got that flaying, skin-wearing kind of vibe. "Archer, I'm here to send you a message. I will skin you and collect your hide as a trophy." I knew it. But what a fantastic joke.
Again, maybe I've become desensitized to the abysmalness of this.
I feel like you were stumping for Stephanie Phillips to be writing, the X-Men book, or perhaps Uncanny X-Men. Tom Revort's the editor on this book. There's a very good chance that she's going to end up on X-Men somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
She could be the one doing the Phoenix book. It would kind of make sense.
Yeah, I would not put it past Tom to give a generic Stephanie an X book because they gave a book to a man, so they have to give at least 3 more to women.
And then there are also a lot of really bad tropes. And, within the confines of the story, Black Widow has to find Clint Barton Hawkeye in Madripoor, not because there's assassins going after him. I think she's aware of that, but she needs to get to him because he's a wanted man, because people believe that he's committed this atrocious act, like this assassination himself. And we have Mockingbird kind of show up, and you're wondering, well, why wouldn't Mockingbird actually help Black Widow do this? She kind of explains it, I guess. She's been denied access to classified information, and she's not able to help her out. But she does give her some key pieces of information to send her along on her journey. But when we get the introduction to Mockingbird, it's so bad. Bobby Morse, a.k.a. Mockingbird, spy, superhero, Clint's ex-wife, not a comedian. They've got to stop doing these intros.
It's such a trope for them to do the cutesy-wootsy intro to a character that my brain, kind of like a trauma response, has started blocking it out. And sometimes I don't realize that those things happen because my brain's protecting me from the cringe that you assign me.
I don't know. When's the last time they did anything good with Mockingbird?
25 years ago? It's been way too damn long, and I don't foresee it changing anytime soon.
25 years ago, I was barely old enough to drink a beer. I'm old enough to be a grandpa now, man. That's fucked up.
Well, blame Marvel for not hiring anyone worth a damn in close to 2.5 decades.
As I mentioned earlier, the worst thing about this comic book is the flow and the pacing of it. The way that it's told, they want to show up in mid-res, and I don't particularly have a problem with that as she's getting to this Mikhail guy and trying to find out what's going on because she knows that he wants to kill Hawkeye. And apparently he's placed a bomb on him or whatever. And she ends up basically torturing him with her symbiote. Like she ends up making some spiders or whatever. And then we get all these time jumps to make the story more confusing. Whenever they do these time jumps, Doc, have you ever noticed they always leave out the most exciting parts of the stories? Apparently there's 4 other people that have tried to kill Clint along the road, but it has to be Black Widow and Hawkeye, so we don't show the entire Hawkeye story leading up that sounds like it was pretty exciting.
The actual action doesn't interest these people. The only thing that interests them is the melodrama. They don't seem to have any real interest in actually telling the superhero part of the superhero comic.
And what we've been told up to along the way is that basically Clint has been accused of this assassination. That Mikhail guy actually dropped like a bomb on him and he never knew it. And he's like walking around apparently with this explosive device hooked up to him. Thankfully, Natasha arrives with her symbiote just in time to save him. But I guess it basically makes him deaf or whatever. But nobody's ever been more happy to see Natasha, Black Widow, in that time. And there's just like this terrible part where he goes, "You have a symbiote attached to you, but we're going to have to talk about that another time." It was like, that's the most interesting part of the conversation.
Honestly, I am never surprised by Stephanie Phillips with cringy dialogue. She put it there so that she could have something to do when she runs out of plot later, because she recognizes that the story that she actually wrote here doesn't really have much meat to it. And eventually, very quickly, she's going to run out of plot and need somewhere to go with the fucking book to justify people continuing to read it beyond issue 2.
She has a symbiote attached to her. This is her best friend. They are treated more like the Hawkeye and Black Widow from the MCU rather than comic books, which definitely threw me off in this entire thing. And I hate acknowledging it and then not answering it.
Well, of course.
If I met you at a bar and you showed up with a symbiote attached to me and I was like, "Doc, you've got a symbiote attached to you, but we'll talk about it later. Let's get some wings." That would be weird.
Yes, it would. And
even in the Marvel 616 universe, that would be weird.
It would be really fucking weird because no one would actually have that reaction.
Within the comic book, they imagine the big mystery is who framed Clint Barton, who framed Hawkeye, that he killed this Russian foreign minister that was doing this big speech, in front of, on America's soil, I believe. And when they show the event happening, they show you the colors that are associated with the weapon and all that stuff. You immediately recognize it to be Hawkeye. And I don't know about you, but I was none at all surprised whatsoever. And he's like, "Yeah, I did it." And I was like, what an amazing ending.
When you have a story and then you can only go 2 ways with the twist, which is, I think it was actually Bullseye dressed up as me. That's the one way you can go. The other way is, "Oh yeah, I did it." By making it a cliffhanger, you're telegraphing that it's going to be a twist. And the only way you can go with the I did it or I didn't do it and make it a twist when it's a superhero is I did it.
There's a way to set the story up and make it be pretty cool. And this just wasn't it. It's terrible execution across the board.
I don't disagree with you on that. There is much, much better ways to tell this story. Maybe my level of expectation for Stephanie Phillips is she didn't actually like poop on the page and hand it in and say, I did my work, boss. I've just deluded myself because of how bad she is, that not wanting to throw the fucking comic across the room on every single panel made it not bad. The soft bigotry of low expectations. And let me just say that for Stephanie Phillips, my expectations are fucking low.
Joanne Stair and Jadzia Axelrod ruined you for bad comic books.
You know what? A year ago, I would have said this was among one of the worst comics of the year. And this year, I'm just like, it's not fucking terrible.
And the worst part about this is if Stephanie Phillips had had a normal career progression and didn't just go from like 1 or 2 indie books to Marvel and DC writing everything, within a 6-month time frame, she probably along the way would have learned how to write a story like this where you're doing a bunch of flashbacks and lead up to the tension and the big reveal and actually have it be surprising and really impactful. But because they just threw her in the deep end, she never had the opportunity or she never had the chance to really grow as a writer and become competent. And she's just stuck there like fucking treading water, trying not to drown, very unsuccessfully. And I do think Marvel Comics and DC Comics really did her a disservice by throwing her on a bunch of books when she clearly wasn't ready.
Marvel and DC have done a lot of the female talent that they've hired over the last few years a severe disservice in how they've poorly crafted a career trajectory for them. No one except for the most desperate or the most novice is willing to accept the page rates you're offering. I get that. But you can't keep sticking these honestly talentless writers into prime positions and expecting them to not crash and burn. Because look, Stephanie Phillips has been crashing and burning for quite some time now. And you don't seem like you're really terribly interested in, pulling her out of that fucking nosedive. You're like, fuck it. She answers the call. She takes our shit page rate. Yeah, so we're just going to keep riding this one until the wheels fall off as well. The same way we've done with Tinny Howard and the same way we've done with most of the other female creators that we've hired in the last few years. There's always some other schlub willing to answer the call after this one has been completely burned out, and any amount of goodwill or ability to bamboozle the audience into buying their product has long since faded.
And that would be the story of Marvel Comics for at least the last 5 years now. Doc and I reviewed this thing in full, obviously for YouTube. We had to cut it down a little bit. But if you'd like the uncensored version of this, you got to go to the Thinking Critical Patreon, where we feature tons of Doc. It's in the video description. And we have a good time, but it's not just Doc. You also get Jim from Weird Science, you get Aaron Sparrow, you get Nick Weiser, all the great people here on Thinking Critical YouTube.
Exactly. And we don't have to bamboozle you by putting not ready for prime time folks on the channel. We don't even try to pretend that our people are ready for prime time.